Hello, and welcome to the first and possibly final installment of JD Reads Old Books. This first title caught my eye several months ago. The German Catastrophe, written by Friedrich Meinecke. The title of Chapter 7 seemed of particular import, as I've never seen the issue framed this way before. Mass Machiavellianism. I've highlighted several sections, and I'll move through them as smoothly as I can. As we have already explained, the character of the German people of Hitler's day resulted from a continuous shifting since Goethe's time of psychological forces, a disturbing of the psychological equilibrium between the rational and irrational. The calculating intellect was excessively exaggerated on one hand, and the emotional desire for power, wealth, security, and so forth on the other hand. As a result, the acting willpower was driven onto dangerous ground. Whatever could be calculated and achieved technically, if it brought wealth and power, seemed justified. Even, in fact, morally justified if it served the welfare of one's own country. The new ethics of national egoism, the doctrine of sacro egoismo, had to be added to give this shifting of the psychological forces the proper blessing. Men now began to think about these conflicts between new and old ethics in the Machiavellian terms, or at least were influenced towards Machiavellianism. For the German people of the Third Reich, there finally came to be no conflict between various ethical laws at all, but only one single law: win power at any price. For propaganda, to be sure, some support from the older ethics was needed. This was found in the slogan, "Common welfare takes precedence over individual welfare." If one now considers the last monstrous performance of the Hitler Party as it finally left the scene, the heroic determination to survive by means of a truly unscrupulous and ruinous exploitation of the people's last drop of strength in order to lengthen a little the life of the bankrupt concern, then one sees at once that the welfare of the party and its leaders had swallowed up in itself the common welfare of the German people. The phrase coined in Italy, sacro egoismo, certainly indicates that it was not only in Germany that there were shifting changes in spiritual and intellectual life. "Our country, right or wrong," was the saying of the American jingo. The phrase, if given absolute acceptance, is hideous and harmful in its consequences because it throws aside all moral limits in political transactions. Skipping ahead. The difference in situation between the times and nations of today and those of the ancient regime from the Italian Renaissance onward is that formerly the Ragione di Stato and Machiavellianism were the more or less secretly guarded province of a small class of political thinkers and statesmen. They lived in the midst of people who received their moral teachings from the church and otherwise lived naively and unreflectively amid the needs and narrowness of their daily life. The basic dynamic force in the past century and a half, the enormous increase in population, which by its pressure has called forth wholly new historical phenomena, here again comes to light. Politics is now no longer the affair of the few. Ever larger classes, pushing up from below, want to take a hand in it. And this widening of the circle of politically active people multiplies the keys to the chest of poisons in which lies the essences of Machiavellianism. From being an aristocratic affair, Machiavellianism became a bourgeois affair, and finally became mass Machiavellianism. It had already arrived in the age of imperialism before the First World War. Every political leader participating in it could justify ethically his often rude folk egoism by his intense solicitude for the life and existence of his own people. He could appear very noble and great if he took up the really frightful phrase, "My country, right or wrong," and acted accordingly. This truth, however, ought not to be a justification for us Germans. When the universal Occidental character of the evil has once been recognized, Ethical as well as historical considerations demand that we Germans should mind our own business and seek to understand Germany's special part in it. For in the end, may not the accusation of our opponents be correct, to the extent that, though we were not the only ones, we have produced in the shape of the Germans of the Third Reich the mass Machiavellianism, which is perhaps the most dangerous for the world? The ideals of the German National Union of 1859 still evidenced close feeling with the liberal ideas of Western Europe, but the steering of the work of national unification was transferred from the hands of the unarmed professors and the equally unarmed writers and economists of 1859 to the hands of an arms-minded Junker, Otto von Bismarck. The specifically Prussian and militarist characteristics of which we have already spoken were stamped upon him. This is the last run, don't worry. Once more, we must repeat that it is here not a question of accusing, but of understanding. Bismarck's founding of the German Empire was an achievement of historic greatness. Formerly, in the brilliance of the achievement, we saw too little the hidden, dark points where it was vulnerable and where disease might later set in. The empire gave too much play to Prussian militarism, and with it, to that dangerous mentality of Prussian self-sufficiency, which it could create or foster in the empire's leaders and in the bourgeois. Thereby, the path to mass Machiavellianism became broader in Germany. The break with the Goethe period and its ideal of humanity became surprisingly sharp. As the shrewd observer Karl Hildebrand once wrote in the 1870s, to read today the letters and diaries of Goethe's era seem as though we are already separated from it not by decades, but by centuries. We cannot say that there was any complete degeneration before the First World War. If Bismarck's caution and wise circumspection had been exercised by successors in European and world policy, we should have passed through the danger zone of the age of imperialism and perhaps have been able to get ahead with the curing of our internal ills. That's chapter 7.